Welcome back to the Learn Unity and C# coding series. In this video, we'll take a look at how to add collisions between game objects and how to write our first piece of code in order to destroy the ships attacking our city. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to need to do is enable some collisions between the different objects in our game. To do this, we will click on the object. In my case, I'll start with ship number 2. And just like last time we added our rigid body in order to get physics by clicking on Add Component, we're going to click on Add Component again. And this time we want to add a collider to our object. In my case, if you start typing collider in, you'll get a range of options. You don't need anything too fancy here. I'm just going to be using a box collider 2D. Now, if you click on the Edit Collider button and zoom in, you will see that a square or box will automatically appear. In my case, it's just a little bigger than my ship though, and so I want to make this a little smaller so that I'm not having collisions detected when I hit the space beside my ship, but only when I actually hit the ship. You want to do the same thing for any other ships that you're going to have in your game. Add your collider and edit it so that it's about the right size. Now our ships have colliders, but at the moment there's nothing in our city for them to collide with. And so you'll want to click on your city or whatever you're putting at the bottom of your screen and add a box collider there as well. I'm going to make it so that once it just kind of gets within the city limits, it'll detect the collision, and I want to make sure that it covers the entire bounds of my map. Now you'll notice a difference already when you click play. As you can see here now, the ships are now colliding with the city. Obviously this isn't quite the effect we want ultimately, but it's a good start. Next thing we're going to do is create our first piece of code. So I'm going to head on down to my project window, and you can right click, go to create, and we're going to create a C# script. C# is the language that Unity uses for all of its coding purposes. Now when you click on this, you will see a new script appear at the bottom, which is automatically called new behavior. You're going to want to rename that, and in my case I'm going to call this destroy. You can then double click on the script to open it up in Visual Studio. And if for some reason, when you click on the script, it's not opening in Visual Studio or it's opening up in your notepad or something like that, you can easily fix this by going into your Unity preferences, clicking on External Tools, and making sure that your script editor is set to Visual Studio as opposed to Open by File extension. All right, now when you open your first script, you'll notice that Unity already has generated quite a bit of the code for you, and I'll just give you a heads up as to what this means. At the top here, we have a series of using statements, which just gives this script access to sort of different libraries of things that Unity can do. For the most part, we won't be touching this until later on, so you don't have to worry too much. Below that is the name of your class. You'll notice that in this case, it is exactly the same as the name we put into Unity, destroy, and it needs to be that way. If I were to go and change the name of my script in Unity, I would also have to make sure that I change the name of the script here. Otherwise, they would not recognize each other and whatever code you type won't run. Now next up, we've got a couple of functions here. The first is our start function, and this code specifically is going to run at the start of the game. So as soon as you load the game and the object with the script appears, it will immediately run whatever is between these brackets. Next up is the update function, which, as the note here suggests, it's called every frame. So this is happening many times per second while your game is running. Again, constantly then, as the game runs, anything that's between these two brackets will happen. To start off, we're going to start with a fairly simple piece of code, and we're going to put it in our start function for now. This one is going to be a destroy code. And what do we want to destroy? Well, in brackets, we'll type game object. And then we add a semicolon. In C#, a semicolon is sort of like a period and ends almost every line of code. What this code is going to do is it will simply, as it suggests, destroy whatever game object this script is attached to, and it's going to do it right at the start of the game. I'm going to hit save to update this. Now, if I were to take this code, click on one of my ships, I can click add component, and if I start typing in destroy, my script will now show up. And now if I were to play the game, you'll notice that that ship instantly destroys itself as soon as the game begins. Now this is not quite what we want, but it gives us a bit of an idea of what the destroy game object line can do. Just to give you another bit of an idea of what this is capable of, we could also use this in our update function. Now if I just put it here, it would look the exact same because as soon as the first frame of the game starts, it would destroy the game object. But I could also do something like put an if statement, and I could do something like if, and have the game check for an input, like whether or not I am pushing down a key. And in this case, I could do like the space key. And right now, if I were to load my game, now when you play the game, everything looks normal until I hit the space key and then the ship is destroyed. Again, not quite what we want, but it shows some different ways that we could use this script. Now, what we're going to want for our purposes, instead of this, is we don't want anything to be destroyed at the start or on a button press, so we're going to create our own function. We're going to come down here and type in void, and the function we're going to use is called onMouseDown. Now, if you start typing, you'll actually see that it will automatically give you that suggestion. You can click that and hit enter, and it will actually put in all of the syntax for you, including the brackets to contain the code. Now at this point, we could put in our destroy game object, and what this will do, and if you mouse over it will actually explain, this function will run whenever the user has pressed the mouse button well over a GUI element or a collider, in our case, a collider. Now back in Unity, I'm just going to add this component to my second ship. And now when I press play, ships will behave normally, but if I can click on them, they will destroy. This is actually starting to feel a little bit like a game finally. It's got a ways to go though, and we will tackle that in our next tutorial where we will add a bit of a point system. Now that we're a little more comfortable with using this destroy game object line in our script, we're going to add one more feature. So head back into our destroy script. And at the moment, whenever our ships hit the city, they simply sit on top of the buildings, which looks a little silly. I want to make it so that they are destroyed when they collide with it. So we're going to create a new function. We don't want this to happen at the start or all the time and not when we click on it. So our new function is going to be something called an onCollisionEnter2D. Now the good news is you can actually click it here in your menu and hit enter, and it will fill in all of the syntax for you. Now most of this here doesn't need to concern us too much at this point. What you do need to know is that this function will be called anytime the object that has it enters a 2D collider. So in our case, anytime a ship hits something else with a collider, it's going to run this piece of script. And what we want it to run is destroy game object. With that little tweak, we now have things set up so that when our ships hit the city, they disappear, adding to the difficulty because you can no longer click them while they're sitting on the ground. Next time, we'll take a look at how to add a point system in order to make your game a whole lot more interesting. Thanks for watching this video. If you found it helpful or enjoyed the video, please be sure to click like or to subscribe to the channel.